So what I'm going to do is maybe a slightly modified version of this Lighthouse meditation, which I have done before. There's a couple of options when we do this meditation. You can do this for your own individual self. We're going to imagine ourselves as represented by a lighthouse with many levels, okay? But we're going to turn the lighthouse from like a stone lighthouse, which represents like the confining edges around us, to a crystal lighthouse. And I thought I'd make it a little bit more interesting by adding a little bit of color and adding a few more qualities to this exercise. So we're going to imagine in the center of each room, the lighthouse has several rooms and it's sitting on an island which connects us to the earth. And each room, we're going to put in the middle of the room, we're going to have like a little crystal fireplace, if you like, or a little crystal lantern or light container, like glass crystal container. And we're going to take a flame, a light from the sun, and we're going to light up each level of our being, each of the energy centers in our body, in our lighthouse. And then we're going to imagine them radiating out through the lighthouse walls into the surrounding countryside. So rather than a lighthouse with just one main light at the top, we're going to imagine a light in every single room of the whole lighthouse. So the whole lighthouse is literally lit up with color and radiance. So that's the idea. You can do this exercise on just your own self if you want to clear your own system and come to a more balanced position. Or what we can do, what I will do, is I'll tune into the whole group energy and I'll describe what I feel and see for almost like a lighthouse that represents the whole group at the moment. So every time you do this exercise, because when you do it at different times and different places, your system might be feeling different things. So it's not going to ever be the same twice. Every time you do it, because we're at a different point in our life development, it will bring up what we need to be aware of right now in this moment. Okay, so what we do today will be different from what happens another day. So I'll describe what I feel for the group. For those of you who've been doing this for a while, you can do the same thing. Just tune into the whole group energy as a big group lighthouse on the earth. You can do it just for the group, or you can do it for yourself and the group. If you're doing it for both, just when you go into each room, ask how do you feel in yourself, in your own body, in that area, and then light up the flame and let it spread. And then ask, how does it feel in this area for the whole group? And you might feel very different things, because what energy follows thought. So what you think about, you'll feel. So if you're tuning into a group energy, you start to, with practice, pick up on the group energy. Okay. You might find that when you tune into the group energy, it's a little different to your own. And if it's the group energy is nicer than your own, you can use it to support you. If your energy is nicer than the group energy, you can use that to support the group until everyone's in sync and in harmony. So let's have a go. The first thing I want you to do is imagine that your whole being is a big lighthouse with it anchored on the earth, on a little island in the ocean, and the ocean all around. Above your heads, there will be a beautiful bright sun. So it's almost like a lighthouse in the daytime. But having said that, as you go through the lighthouse, it might go from day to night in different areas. So notice if you like it goes from a daytime to a nighttime environment as you go through each of the centers, because that's often what happens and what has happened in the past. But let's just start with a beautiful bright sun above your head, and it's a nice clear blue sky and clear day. And imagine that you're a little person, if you like, standing on top of the lighthouse, on the roof of the lighthouse. So visualize the sun above, that represents the life source. And notice if the sun is radiant and bright and situated above your head. Sometimes if it's not centered, it might be a little left or a little right. And ask, is my sun above me, directly above me, or is it a little bit off to one side or other? Does it feel really nice and beautiful and free to tune into? Is it radiant and flowing? Imagine it sending sun's rays down from above you to the top of your head. So as you tune into the top of your head, imagine that the sun's rays is sort of lighting up a flame in there's a crystal on the top of the head, like yellow, just to make it a yellow crystal of some form. And as the light hits the yellow crystal, it lights up a flame in the middle of the crystal. Okay. And we'll imagine this yellow crystal on the top of your head, or a star in the picture here, has been lit up by the sun. It's received the energy of the sun and the life source. It's lighting up the crystal and it's radiating out through the crystal. Or you can imagine as a flame. It's up to you. If the flame is easier, use a flame. If a crystal's more attractive to you, use a crystal. Imagine it lighting up and radiating out over the ocean. So think of the light at the crown radiating out over the ocean. Does it feel nice and bright on the crown of the head? Does it feel bigger or smaller than the sun above? Does it feel brighter or dim? Does it feel clear or murky? Does it feel like the energy is spreading out evenly all directions over the ocean, so that if someone was sitting outside looking from a distance on the sea in a boat, could they see that yellow, beautiful flame or light radiating out over the ocean from a distance? So for the group, for me, it feels fine. For the group, it feels fine. It's a little bit more focused light than the one above, which is bigger. It's very intense. It's quite bright. But notice how it feels to you. Does it feel easier to tune into? Do you have to think about it? If you have to think about it, then it means there's something going on, because you don't have to analyze it. You want to describe what you feel, not interpret what you feel. Okay. So instead of saying I can't do this, or I find it hard, that's dialogue. It's either hard or it's easy. It's either bright or it's dull. It's either centered or it's not centered. So you just basically ask questions and describe how it feels on the top of your head. Is it easy? Is it hard? Does it make you feel concentrated or annoyed, or does it make you feel calm and peaceful? But let's imagine it represents the crystal of yellow flame of wisdom, and that wisdom is radiating out over the earth through the environment into the planet. Okay. Then what we're going to do is we're going to imagine that we've got a little lantern, right? Flame, or a little torch, right? Imagine we're holding a torch, and we put it in and we light up the torch, and we're going to take that flame down. We're going to hop down from the rooftop of the lighthouse into where the normal light proper is, inside your head. So imagine you're descending inside your head with your awareness, and you're walking into the center of the room, and you're lighting up the light, the crystal, or the light in the center of the head. And we'll make it an emerald green crystal, an emerald crystal, okay? We'll give it a green color today, or you can use the same color. It's up to you. I don't mind. I'm just making it a little bit more creative, okay? So imagine there's like a crystal, it's an emerald crystal, and you're lighting it up so that a light radiates out from the center of your head through the edges of the head out into the landscape around. You can imagine that, if you like, the walls of the room are made of crystal, emerald, and you're lighting up the walls, and it's radiating through the walls and being reflected out into the landscape. So how does that feel? Is it easy to imagine than the light above the head or on top of the head? Is it big and bright? Is it small? Is it concentrated or diffused? Does it feel like it's glowing and it's active, or is it dim? Does it feel like as the light spreads out through your head, does it hit any tension in the side walls of the skull, or the top of the head, or the back of the bottom of the head and the floor? So let the light radiate out all directions. And if there's any murkiness or any difficulty, imagine the light, when it hits the difficulty, it spreads through it and around it, surround any tight spots, any dim patches, and radiate out over the ocean. So again, if you were sitting in a boat out in the sea, can you see a nice, clearly reflected light? Or does it feel muffled or dim or only shining in some directions? If you feel like when you go into your head it's thinking too much, if you feel like the brain is very active, just notice that. Notice the activity. Notice the busyness if it's busy, and surround the busyness with this peaceful. It's like become aware of the air around the lighthouse and the peace and calm in the atmosphere around you. And notice the busyness in the head if there is busyness. And then ask yourself, how do I feel inside my own head? And then you tune into the group and say, how does it feel inside the group head area? You know, as if you're representing the whole group. Does it feel similar? Does it feel different? Does it feel free? Does it connect with the light on the crown? Does it connect with the light above? And then you imagine it flowing through. Imagine that you're now, your consciousness, carrying the little light or torch or lantern, whatever you prefer. Imagine you're going down a stairwell from the head through into the throat. So you're going to walk down a little stairwell in the lighthouse and come down the stair and come into another room, which is basically the room representing the throat area of your body. Okay. So as you walk down the stairs from the head to the throat, it's like you're going down into the lighthouse. Okay, so often when you walk in a normal lighthouse, you come from seeing out over the sea to going inside into an enclosed space. Does it feel like you're going into an enclosed space? Does it feel like it takes effort to move from the head to the throat? Does it feel like the head is so active that it's hard to get out of that activity and take your attention down into the throat area? That's the reason I'm describing it that way, is because that's what I'm feeling for the group. It feels like the head's quite bright and active. And as we try and go down the stairwell, it's almost like hard to do because it's so active in the head. So imagine that if that's the case, allow yourself to feel really active in the head. Let's say you've got like 90% of your attention in the head. Well, the other 10%, imagine you're walking down the stairwell and you're getting a glimpse of what it's like in the throat with that, as much as your awareness as you can get in there. Now, as you walk down into the throat area, imagine that you're walking to the middle of the room where there's a little fireplace or a little altar, like a little, let's imagine it's like a little fireplace or a little oil burner or something like that. And I wanted to imagine that you're lighting that with the torch and it starts to flame and brighten up. And as the light spreads from the center of the room, if you can get to the center of the room, notice if the room, as the light spreads and hits the walls of the room from the inside of the throat, does it feel like it's very clean and tidy environment, or does it feel a bit dirty and mucky? Does it feel like the walls are a bit sort of closed in and constricting in the throat? Because quite often that's how it feels. Does it feel like the room is clear or cluttered? Does it feel like it's comfortable in there, or is it a little bit muffled, a little bit uncomfortable? So when I tune into this for myself, if I tune into myself, it actually feels quite bright. If I tune into this for the group, it actually feels a little bit more closed in and muffled. It doesn't feel like the light spreads out as far. So then what I want you to do, as the light of the fire in the middle of the room gains some momentum, you imagine it spreading out and flickering against the walls. And the walls, notice if they're made of crystal or they're made of stone, or what are they made of? So let's say they start off as sort of like a normal, like a castle stone walls, right? For example, imagine that you're turning, as the light hits the walls, it transmutes it into crystal, and we'll make it a sapphire color, blue color crystal. Okay, the blue color crystal represents power, faith, and protection and communication. It's to do with expression, because the throat is the channel between the heart and the head. It's the communication channel. So imagine that you've got this flame in the middle of the room spreading out to the walls. The walls are turning into a blue crystal, sapphire. And imagine that they're sort of transmuting and clearing the walls of any murkiness or smokiness and starting to glow and radiate out through the walls of the lighthouse out into the ocean. So again, if you imagine there was a little person sitting in a boat from a distance, can they see the light inside the room glowing and radiating through the crystal walls out into the sea? Now, as I'm talking about that, it feels like it's starting to happen. It started off quite confined, and the air and the atmosphere inside the throat for the group feels a little bit more stifled or constricted and smoky, so it's not really a real pristine, clear room. But as I'm noticing that, it's starting to shift, and the walls are starting to glow and the light's starting to get out. You can keep the door open in the roof so that the light from above can flow in as well. And so we can basically almost get rid of the floors, if you like, in the roofs, so that the light in the third eye and the light in the crown, the light in the sun above, has all got a clear channel all the way through to support the light in the throat. So imagine that you're sitting in the throat, you're a little person observing the light radiating out, noticing the environment, noticing the visual imagery of it, if you can see anything, noticing the texture or the feeling. Is it a comfortable room? Is it furnished? It feels a bit sort of like, to me as a group, a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit sort of like you're there on your own. It doesn't feel like there's anyone else there maybe. Or does it feel very busy for some of you? It feels like a room in the lighthouse. It's, I suppose, not the most comfortable room to be in. So you'd sit there and just let the flame flow out, and that protection and that blue crystal walls and the faith and the power energy radiating through the walls, imagine it sort of melting away imperfection. It's melting away any doubt. It's burning up anything that's making you doubt and question your own power and self-empowerment, okay? Your confidence in your self-expression. So we're going to imagine that blue light is sort of purifying all of that and clearing the throat and allowing you to find your vibration, to find your voice, and to express your truth. So you can sit with that as long as you like. It feels like we need to spend a little bit of time in the throat. The throat's often a center in our bodies that gets a little bit stuck. It sort of interferes sometimes in the communication between the head and the heart below. So we might just notice it starting to clear. Notice if one side of the throat area is clearing quicker than the others. Does the light spread to the left more or to the right easier? Which way does it go more freely? Does it flow forwards through the front of your body? Does it flow backwards through the back of the body? So you can ask yourself questions. Is there a nice spherical radiance going all directions? Or does it feel like it's clearing one direction quicker than the other, which it is for the group? Does some parts of the throat area feel like the walls are hard to clear or the environment is hard to purify? And you just let it surround anything that's difficult until it starts to radiate. Once you start to feel it's a little bit more clear, you feel it might start to blend with the third eye and the crown and the sun above, so they're all starting to glow together. And then what you can do is the little person that represents your consciousness takes his torch or her torch, and he or she starts walking down the staircase, down through your body into the center of your heart. So the next room in the lighthouse we're going to explore is the heart region of the lighthouse. So imagine you're walking down the staircase, and as before, is it easy to move from the throat to the heart, or does it feel like it's a little bit apprehensive to go down to the heart? Does it feel like it keeps you up, the energy? Is the stairwell clear? And as you wander down the stairwell and you get into the little room that represents the heart, imagine you're finding your way to the center of the room where there's a little altar or fireplace prepared for a flame, and you light it up with the torch and you fan that fire and let it spread out, that radiance, until it starts to fill up the room. It's like it might start as a small lightning, gradually bigger, and as it starts to brighten up and catch a light in the center of the heart, you imagine it radiating out and hitting the walls of the room. We're going to imagine the walls of the room are like a pink crystal structure, pink and crystalline, and that the pink walls around the heart represent unconditional love. So we're lighting up the flame from the source, radiating out unconditional love through the room, into the walls, and through the walls out into the environment. So notice if the room is nice and clear, or is it cluttered? Is it bright or is it dull? Is it comfortable in there or not comfortable? Is it gentle and soft, or is it a bit hostile and agitated? Notice how the environment is. Is the air clear or is the air fresh? Does it feel like there's ventilation? It can breathe. So you can imagine that, almost like the crystal can breathe, is in and breathe out. Does it let light in from above, from the throat and the third eye and the crown, and the source above, spilling down the stairwell and into the room? So ask yourself, how does it feel in your own individual heart center? Think about your own, just you're within your heart. And then think about in the thorax area, and then think about for the group. How does the group energy feel in the collective heart? And if you do that, you can compare, how do I feel as an individual? How does it make me feel better when I think of my own heart, or worse than when I think of the group heart? As I said before, if you feel better in that center and really clear, you can overflow that clarity onto the group to support the group. If you feel like it's worse, you can let the clarity and the health in the group flow back and support you. So wherever it feels healthy, work from there. If neither you nor the group feels healthy, bring the light in from above or below, or from the little flame in the center spreading out, because that'll clear anything as it spreads out and through into the room. So sit in the heart for a little while. Ask yourself the question, does the light in the heart, the pink light radiating out through the walls of the lighthouse out into the ocean, is it getting out or is it muffled? If you are sitting in a boat in the ocean looking at the lighthouse from a distance, in other words, taking the viewpoint of someone observing you, can they see the walls of your heart literally glowing and radiating this pink light, soft, gentle, loving light out into the world? Now, it might feel a little bit difficult to do that. It might make you feel, as you start radiating unconditional love out, you might start feeling things that aren't unconditional love, because as you focus on what you want to build, anything that interferes with that will muffle that energy. So let's say you're spreading unconditional love out into the world. This beautiful, if you go back into the flame, into the fireplace, imagine that the unconditional love in there is pure and connected with the source. It's pure in the center. Then imagine as it radiates out. Let's say as it's radiating out, you feel it's a little dim or muffled, for example, and you start to feel a little bit anxious or nervous or agitated or doubtful, or you start to feel maybe even the feeling that I don't feel loved, for example, or you feel I don't feel that loving, or I feel I'm not quite confident, or whatever it may be. What that feeling's telling you is that's what's interfering with the unconditional love spreading out. So imagine that the fire, that beautiful fire, that pink flame, if you want to make it a pink flame, as it radiates out, anything that doesn't feel unconditional love becomes fuel for that fire. And it's all like, if the room was filled with thick gas, you can set it on fire and burn it all up. And then you overflow the unconditional love out through the walls into the sea around you. So whatever works for you. And the reason I'm giving you all these different descriptions is because each one of you might be feeling slightly different things. And if I use lots of different descriptors, one of them might appeal to you more than another. So we're sort of looking pairs of opposites. It's either really vibrant and radiant and clear, or it's dim and murky and congested, or it's somewhere in between. It feels loving and confident, or it might feel not so loving. Does it feel like the walls are getting purified and cleared? Does it feel like the room's a bit more like needs a bit of renovation, or a little bit of reorganizing, a little bit of cleaning up? You can renovate that room and make it, sort of build it into whatever you want it to be. A beautiful room in your lighthouse, in your being, that you can share and spread out into the world and express beauty, love, tolerance for your own stuff and everybody else's. Does it feel like the heart energy, the light in the heart, is blending with the light in the throat? If you imagine the floor disappearing and the light above in the throat and the light in the heart are blending, does it connect with the head? So if you think about head, throat, heart, are those three parts of your body all lit up and blending, or are they lit up and not blending, or are they not lit up at all? So notice the relationship between heart, throat, and head. Do they feel like they're one, or do they feel like they're not quite getting along? Now, as I'm doing this exercise, I'm spending a little bit of time with this, because it started off quite easy, and now it feels like it's almost like everything's getting murkier and more dim and dull. Now, that doesn't mean it's getting worse. It means the health and the light's flooding into those areas of your body, interacting with the gunk, the mess, the murkiness, anything that's not loving or truthful or expressing, and it starts to purify it. Okay, so we had the wisdom on the crown, burning up all ignorance. We had the third eye, which is a green one. We're going to imagine that as representing truth. I forgot to mention that, but it represents truth and true seeing and concentration, and that burns up all error. The blue in the throat is like power and faith and protection. It burns up all doubt. When you go to the heart, you've got unconditional love inside the heart, that flame radiating through the pink walls representing unconditional love, beauty, and tolerance. Okay, that beautiful, harmonious, loving relationship. The loving energy should be able to flow through your heart, through the walls, and connect with others around you, and also flow back from others through the walls back to connect with your heart. You can imagine that the crystal walls offer a bit of a protection against anything that's not unconditional love. So it only lets unconditional love out and unconditional love in, and anything that's not that can't get through the crystal. So that's why I thought I'd add a bit of crystalline structure to the meditation, because you want to create a system in your own bodies that only allows health in and out and nothing else can get through. It's a protective thing. Keep overflowing that energy, and then we're going to gradually start to move our awareness from our heart center, which is starting to brighten up and clear. The colors might change. If the colors change, allow them to change. There's no hard and fast rule with other meditations. You go with what feels right for you. Imagine that you're spreading through the heart and you're walking down the stairwell, and you're starting to move your consciousness down from the heart through the diaphragm and ribs to the abdomen. So you're going to move down into the next room, which basically runs from the abdomen to the pelvis. And this room of your building, it's a bit like, just like the kitchen of the building, because all your digestive organs are in there. If you imagine you're walking down the stairwell into another room, which are in the solar plexus region. And as you walk down the stairwell from the heart, you take your consciousness for a walk down through the body and connect with your solar plexus below the diaphragm. How does it feel on the way through? Does it feel like you can get in there really easily, or does it feel like it's a thick, dark fog? Okay. And the reason I mention that is because if I imagine myself trying to move down into the solar plexus for the group, it feels like I'm working from a lighter room that's clearing still into a more dark room. The lights are off and I start to go down. The wall, it feels a bit muffled, like it's like a thick sort of darker gas or cloud in there. It feels a little bit more congested and muffled and hard to get into. So as I walk down the stairwell, it almost feels a bit for the group, and this might be different for you, it might feel good for you. Notice the ease with which you go from the heart into the solar plexus room. And it feels like it's a bit of tough going. It's like you have to find your way in the dark, and it's not really easy. And it's a little bit like, I'm not sure if I want to go in there. But imagine that you're taking the torch with you. The torch is going down first and the light's going ahead of you. And as you walk, it's like walking down into a dungeon, maybe. You walk in and you stand on the floor of the solar plexus and you walk to the middle of the room. And in the middle of the room, there's an altar or an oil burner or fireplace. And you light it up with the flame that you're carrying and ignite the room so the light starts to turn on in the room of the solar plexus. And then imagine as it starts to turn on and brighten up, bring some warmth and peace and comfort to that room. And it starts to spread out into the edges, which might be murky or clear, confining or radiant, and hit the walls of the room, which is the walls of your body, if you like, and the walls of your energy field. And imagine the walls are like a ruby color walls, or purple or gold or both, or ruby, like a ruby color. And we're going to imagine that representing peace. It's sort of like a combination of purple and gold, if you want to make it like that. And we're going to imagine it representing peace. Okay? And we're going to imagine the flame firing up and spreading out and hitting the walls. And notice if the room is clear or cluttered, if it's empty or busy, if there's windows or no windows, even you can imagine that. You can open up some windows and let some air in if you like. But imagine that if there are windows, it's in a crystalline wall. It's gone from more of a darker wall, thicker wall, puffy wall, to more like it's starting to glow. And imagine it turning to crystal and the light starting to radiate out through the walls of the room into the surrounding environment. So the solar plexus often represents, when it's balanced, peace and devotion and service. It's a personality center, so often it's where we carry a lot of our stress and our desires and our attachments. Got a lot to do with the digestive organs, so that can be in-grasping and attached, or it can be free and loving and outflowing. And if you connect it up with the heart above, which is unconditional loving energy, You can let some of that pink light from the heart flood down the staircase, even melt through the floor or the roof of the solar plexus, and bring some loving energy into the solar plexus. And that helps to flow in and spread out through the walls to break up any attachments and make loving, healthy connections. So in other words, the light in the solar plexus will gradually spread out, melt away any negative attachments and burn them up and replace them with radiant rays of light, which spread out. If you are sitting in a boat on the ocean and you're looking back at the lighthouse, at that room, at that level, can you see this light radiating through the crystal walls of the solar plexus and see it from a distance? Can you see it from the left, from the right, from the front, from the back? Imagining you're looking at it from all those four directions, north, south, east, west. Can you see the light getting through the walls of your body in each of those directions, or is it easier to the left, say, than the right? Is it easier forward or backwards? Does it feel like the light's getting through, or is it muffled and obscured? So again, as I'm going through this exercise, I'm noticing in quite a lot of the centers when we actually go in deep and tune into them, is that they start off all right, and then they start to, it's a bit murky and you know, like stirred up and agitated. What's the environment feel like in the solar plexus? Does it feel comfortable, or is it fearful? Is it anxious or peaceful? So that peaceful energy burns away that light as it radiates out through the walls, purple or gold or ruby. It burns away attachments, burns away fears, it burns away in-grasping desires, you know, like gluttony and things like that, and replaces it with loving, peaceful connections. Now, it feels like as I'm talking that through, it's starting to feel more peaceful. There's light coming through from the higher parts of the lighthouse. There's light coming from the center, spreading out through the walls. And if you look from outside in, some of that is getting out into the environment. So as it spreads through the walls, it sort of spreads around the lighthouse and creates like an energy field of peace around you. Because if you're feeling peaceful within and you're overflowing it, it'll create peace around. Allow that to keep happening, starting to clear, and then move your awareness gradually as you're ready through down the stairwell. Imagine you're taking your torch down the stairwell from the solar plexus, deeper down into the lighthouse, go lower down in your body through your low back area until you get to the pelvis. So you open the door and you just go down the stairwell and step into another room that represents the pelvis. And that sort of goes from, you know, the top of the pelvis to the bottom of the pelvis almost. And that represents your creative energies, sexual energies. It's got to, let's say it's like your bedroom, if you like, in the lighthouse, your personal space, your creative space, procreative space. And you walk into that room, and as you walk down the stairwell and into the pelvis area, does it feel like the room is bigger or smaller than the last one? Does it feel like it closes in on you, or there's lots of space? Now, the reason I mentioned that is because it felt like it was, you'd expect as you go down a lighthouse to get wider, but it got a bit narrower. It felt a little bit more contained. Does it feel like it's easy to get into that room and walk to the center of the room? In the center of the room, imagine there's a fireplace or an altar or an oil burner, and light it up, light the flame with the torch and let it spread out. Now we're going to imagine this flame as it spreads out into the room. Imagine it spreading out to creative energy, spreading out to the walls. We're going to imagine the walls of the lighthouse around the pelvis. They start to me as an imagery in not myself, but in the group energy. You can imagine it as a bit, so if it's, let's say it's feeling a bit difficult to do for some of you. Are the walls made of crystal, or are they made of stone or wood? Are they feel like they're puffy or solid? Do they feel like they're holding the energy in, or they're letting it through? I mean, are there windows in there, or is there no windows? Imagine that the light, as it hits the walls and clears the room, starting to bring forgiveness. It's going to hit walls, and they're going to be amethyst or lavender color crystal, or sort of a violet color crystal of some sort. The violet color represents freedom, forgiveness, and transmutation. So the violet flame, the violet color actually transmutes. It's got a little bit of love and a little bit of power in it. It transmutes and burns away a lot of past attachment, past hurts, past abuse, victimized or victimizer type consciousness, anything that interferes with the creative energy or abuse of creative energy, and to do with relationships. So it represents forgiveness, it represents freedom, it represents transmutation, and it radiates out through the walls of the pelvis. Imagine that purifying and clearing the walls, violet color walls. You could make it an amethyst crystal, you could make it lavender, you could make it whatever color you want, but sort of anything that's more violet-y color. Let it spread through. If it's a different color altogether, go with the colors you get, because if you're getting different colors to what I'm suggesting, there'll be a reason for that. Does it feel like that loving, forgiving rays are pouring out through the walls of the pelvis into the ocean and the landscape around? So again, if you're sitting in a boat in the ocean, can you see light pouring through the windows, through the walls of the crystalline walls of the pelvis, out into the environment? Does it feel like it spreads forward? Does it spread backwards? Does it spread left? Does it spread right? Does it flow up and connect with the solar plexus, with the light in the solar plexus, and vice versa? Does it flow down and connect with the root and the legs and feet? So imagine the light spreading all directions, up and down, inside out, and then come from outside back in, forward, back, left, right, up and down. So it's going all directions. Now, as you're starting to bring the light and the energy into the pelvis area, how does it feel? Does it feel like it's lightening up, becoming less solid and more refined? Does it feel like it's evening out? Does it make you aware of any unevenness or tension in your low back, hips, or legs? And let it start to clear through and radiate out. Does it communicate with the solar plexus, the heart, the throat, third eye, crown, and the sun above? So you let all those lights start to blend together. Is it working with the other centers or separate? And then, if you want, you can stay with that as long as you like. You can go back to any of the other rooms in your lighthouse at any point. The idea is not to get too sort of fixed on any one room, and you have the freedom to go up and down and keep exploring, because sometimes moving your consciousness around fairly quickly stops you from getting too attached to one center or another. And it helps you to notice the ease or flow with which it takes to move from one place to another. So imagine you're standing in the sacral area, and we've got another room we're going to explore. We're going to go right down to the base of the lighthouse, sitting on the island. Imagine there's a little room there that represents the root center, the base of the perineum or root or coccyx area. And we go down a stairwell and we go to the room. So this is a bit like at the bottom of the lighthouse. This is sort of like the lower room, and it's going to have doors opening up to the island outside. It's your base, it's your grounding center. It's got a lot to do with connection to the earth. It's got a lot to do with connection to your foundations, to your whole of humanity. So when you walk down into the root center, it's like the entrance room, if you like, from below, from the island, from off the island back into the building. It's like the base of the Kundalini energy as well. As you go into that little room, does it feel like you can walk into the center of the room and light up a flame in the middle, oil burner or fire or flame of white light, beautiful white light that represents purity, purity at the base? And imagine that white light spreading out from the center of the root area to the walls, and like diamond walls, or clear, okay? And the white light spreads through the clear crystal walls, out into the island and out into the sea. Does this room feel small or big, contained or free, comfortable or uncomfortable? Does it have windows? Does it feel easy to light up? Does it feel confining or restricting or stuck? Feels to me like the room's for the group is quite bright in the center, but it's a bit muffled around the edges, a little bit smaller and contained compared to some of the other rooms. So sit there for a little while. Imagine you've got this beautiful white light filling up the room. Is it comfortable to be in that room, or is it a little uncomfortable? Imagine this purifying energy is spreading through the walls out into the ocean. If you're sitting in a boat, can you see the bottom of the lighthouse starting to glow with a beautiful white light? And we're not going to finish there. We're going to keep going. We're going to imagine that under the lighthouse, there's like a trapdoor in the center under the flame. And there's like a lift or a beam of light that goes from the root right down. As if your legs are in the earth. Imagine your legs are the island and the sea, and they're plugged into the island and the sea, the rock and the sand and the water. And there's like a beam of light going from the center of the root, base of the lighthouse, to the center of the earth. And imagine your feet are anchored in the center of the earth. And it's like a big cylinder of light. And imagine you're going right down, it's like a teleporter. You stand in the lift, you're beaming down right to the center of the earth and center of the planet. And imagine when you get to the center of the planet, that you can look out and you see the whole edges of the earth from the center to the periphery. Imagine there's a big white fire core of energy in the center of the earth, representing purity, purity of nature, the pristine, immaculate, pure energy of Mother Earth. And it's spreading out from the center of the earth through the planet to the surface of the planet, and then out into the solar system. You can expand your meditation to connect right through the planet out into the solar system back to the source. And then you can almost, if you take your awareness through out into the universe, the solar system, and you imagine you're circling over the earth and you're looking down, you can see your lighthouse from space, your individual lighthouse sitting on the planet, and you can see the sun's rays pouring down through the lighthouse like a beam of light, connecting all the rooms to the core of the earth. So you can flow your energy from the universe down through the lighthouse, through the central cylinder of your being, through all your centers back into the earth, spreading out through the earth, breathing it back into the universe everywhere at once, circulating back around, then coming in again from above through. So basically we're looking at ourselves like our lighthouse is our individual personalities standing on the planet. And our connection to the sun above is like the universe, the central sun above, and the earth below is Mother Earth, Father Sun, Mother Earth, and the ray of light in between is the Christ self. It's the energy of the Christ self. It's the sun. It's who we are. We're a little sun of the Father, Mother, Father, Spirit, Mother, Matter, Mother Earth. And now notice if that beam of light, blending all the colors together, all the crystals and all the flames together into one beautiful fire stream central midline energy of white fire laser core of energy, blending all those different colors and streams of energy. And then you're imagining it starting to spread through into the walls of the whole lighthouse, which is now all made of crystal. And it's just beaming out over the planet horizontally. Okay, so you've got energy coming from the universe above, from the earth below. You can imagine the energy coming from the earth through the lighthouse the other way, up to the source, back to the sun, circulating back around onto the earth. It's like the sun's rays pouring onto the surface of the planet, getting absorbed by the earth, back into the core, up the lift, through the center of your lighthouses, back out to the cosmos. So you can come from the universe through your lighthouse to the earth, back to the universe, or the other way around, through the earth, through your root, through the sacrum, solar plexus, heart, throat, third eye, crown, back to the source. So just keep imagining that you're literally flushing your own being, your whole being out, mentally, emotionally, energetically, physically. That becomes your lighthouse. That's your connection. And the lighthouse is firmly anchored on the ground, but it's aware of its height. The roof and the top of the lighthouse is almost sort of reaching up into the heavens, and that you've cleared your own central energy channel, and it's flowing through the walls of the lighthouse, and it's lighting it all up and radiating out. So the whole lighthouse becomes a big beacon of light. All the colors blend together into one, let's say a big white fire, golden white light. And that energy is horizontally spreading out through the group, through the self, through the group, into the earth, so that anybody on the planet, all the people that are willing to receive that light, can fill up with it. So you imagine it sort of, the light, your light is fully expressing. You don't have to hide it away. You can just open it up and let it all flow. and it flows out through your being, through your energy field, into the environment around you. So it purifies the environment around you. It overflows onto everybody else in family, the whole of the country, Victoria, Australia, wherever you are, whatever country you're in, and overflows to humanity. But it only overflows to those people who are willing to receive and allow themselves to fill up with wisdom, truth, power, true power, not corrupted power, unselfish power, divine power, unconditional love, peace, freedom and forgiveness, and purity. So you're radiating all those qualities out. And when it hits other people's lighthouses, other people's beings, those little lighthouses elsewhere that are sitting on the planet, perhaps are a little bit dejected, some of their lights are out. If they had personalities, some of those lighthouses are like people with their posture drooping over and a bit uninspired and suppressed or fearful. Everybody on the planet who can see the light spreading out can gather some of that light, light up their own little rooms, flames, and start to build energy and confidence. So you're overflowing health through you to other people, through the earth to the people standing on the earth, from the heavens to the people standing on the earth. So they're surrounded, all the negative, all the people on the planet that are negative and struggling and resisting and don't want any help. Some of them won't want help, some of them will not allow themselves to feel, but a great proportion of the planet and humanity might start to get some inspiration from that energy flowing around them, clears their environments so that they can stand tall and start to shine. And that's the image you want to have. You want to imagine that on this planet there are millions of lighthouses, and that each of those lighthouses, when you look from one side of the planet to the other, you can see them all starting to glow in the distance. Now, when I imagine that for the whole of the planet, there's really only a few lighthouses that are fully standing erect. It's like then they're spaced quite a way apart. So that could represent that there's not a lot of humanity that are fully awakened. But as people start to own their energy, you'll feel more lighthouses start to connect heaven to earth. More lighthouses start to radiate until they all interconnect like a network of lights, and it purifies and clears the whole planet. Because humanity, in a sense, are the communication channels on the planet. They're like the electrical circuitry of the planet. Okay, so as people start to light up, the planet starts to light up and be supported. People, communication and resources can flow and share, and everyone gets uplifted. So you can sit with that as long as you like. It's sort of interesting in the meditation. It feels to me, as I'm doing that and going back through my own lighthouse, you can ask yourself, where did you feel the clearest and where did you feel the most struggle? And as you support the struggling areas from the clearer areas, does it feel like your systems are starting to glow and clear? Or does it feel a little bit difficult? Okay, so for some reason, everything seems a little bit, in some ways it's all happening, but I wouldn't say it's all completely clear yet. Okay, what you can do though is make sure that your own system is as clear as it can be and you feel centered from above to the earth below. As you spread out into the world, does it feel like the energy is free to be expressed or muffled? So we'll just sit with that for a little while now and just let the air start to clear, let the channels start to open up. Ask yourself if there's any parts of your body that you're feeling right now that are resisting that flow, being in that pillar of light, which was your lighthouse. Now, for example, in me, I often get my right side of my rib cage sort of struggles a bit. And so you can include any areas of your body that feel a bit like they're struggling inside the light, like it's pouring through from above down, below up, and inside out and outside in. So you're supporting it from every angle, like giving the problems a cuddle. And you'd sit with that till everything starts to calm down and center. So it feels like It feels like it's still going, but it's very, very subtle. It's a little bit like as the light merges with the muck, it creates a little bit of a haze, but gradually it's like smog will all clear and become crystal clear. So it feels to me like we sort of have to sit with that a little bit longer. But you might find in your own meditation, you're basically stopped at a point where you feel like connected one end to the other, and it feels like your cells can breathe. The whole lighthouse, imagine it breathing, sitting in between the sky and the earth, and it's starting to circulate, starting to flow. It's almost like you can feel air circulating through all the floors, and it's almost like the walls, instead of being like a static structure, starting to breathe life energy through them. So you might feel the midline of your body start to breathe, and the walls start to breathe like it's a living entity, which it is, and it's breathing in life energy and out flowing life energy to others, and then out life energy back to the source, circulating within, circulating out, as if the walls of the body don't offer any limitation to the being free and free expression of your inner light. So I reckon that's probably done enough to at least, because we've got a little bit of a rhythm back. I wouldn't say it's perfect, but it might be enough just to get everything moving a little bit. Hope you feel a little bit clearer after that than when you started. You can ask yourself the question, do you feel a little bit clearer through your whole being than you did when you started? And it doesn't have to be perfect, but any improvement is good.